Calling this meeting to order at 1:01 p.m.
Member Brown? Member Childs? Member Jackson?
Present.
Member Smith? Chair Frazier?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Tiffany, do we know if Mr. Little will be in attendance?
He should be back anytime.
Any comments from the guests? Do we have any written complaints? I know that I don't.
I have not received any.
Approval of meeting minutes from March 11, 2025.
I so move that we approve the minutes of March 11th of 25.
Second.
Motion by Brown, second by Jackson. Member Childs?
Yes.
Member Jackson?
Yes.
Member Smith? Member Brown?
Yes.
Chair Frazier?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next up, Discover Crystal Springs Cemetery update.
Well, good afternoon. I won't go through the numbers with you. It's on the page. Activities that we've accomplished at the cemetery since the last meeting. We're continuing working in the office when it's weather's inclement for outdoor work. And we've got over 142 maps indexed in the inventory and also in their individual storage boxes. We have formally started the Friends of Crystal Springs and Morton Hill Cemeteries. That's the name that we're going to be using in the future. We held a board meeting on 12th March, and during the board meeting, we wrote and approved the bylaws for the organization. Since then, we've submitted the paperwork to the state for incorporation of the name. Once it gets approved from the state, we'll then apply for employee identification number. Once we receive that, then we'll officially start changing our name on all our publications and on the Facebook page. Work at Crystal Springs, the grounds, we're working around the areas of the pavilion on the north side. And objective there is to be able to stand on the top of the cemetery and be able to overlook the pavilion and also across the ravine area. So we have a nice overlooked view of the ravine and the cemetery. We've also cut over 6 trees in the floral lane. That's the lane on the south side of the ravine. Removed about 6 of those, and we still have 1 large tree to be removed. Once we've done that, we'll be able to walk completely around the lower level of the ravine.
Tell them these are fallen trees, we're not hacking them.
Yeah, there's all trees that have come down over the years and blocked the path. Morton Hill Cemetery, went out there about 3 weeks ago. There was a large limb came off a tree. And what it did is damaged 8 to 10 monuments and headstones. And also we noticed that in the flagpole, the flag is only attached by 1 grommet. So somehow the flag's got to be replaced and the halyard has to be replaced on that flagpole. As far as work that's going to be upcoming is, again, removing that last tree that's down in Floral Lane. And then we'll start preparing for putting down Memorial Day flags on the veterans' graves. And then we'll be also clearing pathways around the ravine, widening and making it more easily accessible to walk the pathways. And we had an increase of $15 we spent for herbicides to start treating the weeds in the vines. And that's all I have.
Did you guys, when you had your board meeting, did you guys discuss being able to accept donations from the general public?
It's set up so we can receive donations, but we aren't advertising yet until we get approval from the IRS.
You say you are set up, or are you just waiting for the approval from the IRS?
We haven't even applied for it, yes, we have to get the notice from the state. Once we do that, we get the EIN, and then we apply for the nonprofit status.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business update on maintenance/repairs.
Good afternoon. I guess I could just relate what we've been doing. We're in the process of still trying to determine exactly how we're going to handle the yard maintenance throughout the city as well as the cemeteries. We had Public Works go out last week. Their tree had fallen and was across a number of headstones. George made us aware. We sent Public Works out to remove those and take the chipper and cut up the limbs and so forth that were there. Talking with Abbenmarsh, they had the report back from the group that had looked at all of the water pumps out there. And just talking with them this morning, we're going to have them have one of the companies that works with pumps and so forth go out and give us a price to try and put several of them back in operation so that they would be working this summer so that people could use them. As of this point, that's about where things are. We did also have Jack go out and clean up a lot of the old leaves and limbs and so forth that were there so that we wouldn't have the problem of them caking up and whatnot when we got ready to try to cut grass. That's about all we have for right now.
Okay, I have two questions. First and foremost, when you say we, who does that entail?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding when you say.
So you stated that that we are still trying to figure out what to do in reference to things that need to be done in the cemetery and around the city.
Ultimately, it falls to me, but with the help of our Public Works people and all of our other people looking into exactly what we have in the way of equipment, capacity, how we're going to go about it. We spent over $300,000 last year, and we did not get what I wanted, so we're not going that way again.
When you said 300,000, so would that be considered like the grass cutting and the grass cutting season or other things?
Basically grass cutting, everything, including the parks and the cemetery and so forth. As a matter of fact, it was closer to 400,000 actually.
Okay, so in response to that first question, because I do have another for myself, thank you for answering. But secondly, myself and I would think some of the board would like to be included on when it comes to the cemetery. I know that it entails everything other parts of the city, but when it comes to the cemetery, grass cutting and those type of things that we should be aware of.
And that would be fine. In fact, what I'd like to do is I notify you and you can then share the information with the other board members if that would work.
Yeah, that's a start, so I appreciate that much. My second question is, you said you sent Jack Campbell out. How is that? Is he still under contract? I thought that contract ended when grass cutting season ended.
It did. We just gave him a purchase order to go out and get that preparation done and out of the way so that it's something we wouldn't have to contend with once we get started, however we do it.
So with that being said, what was that amount spent or billed or purchase order, however that works?
$3,000.
And so that leads me to my next question. Where did the $3,000 come from to pay him?
Came out of the general fund budget and was basically taken from other areas within the budget.
Okay, and then also, so this is now April, and I do recall last year, April is when the season for being able to bid for grass cutting came about. Are we there yet? Do we have a date?
We have already been holding meetings internally for trying to get set up to start doing this work ourselves. We're going to hire seasonal employees and part-time people and supervise them and do the work ourselves. We're not going out for bid generally this year for all of the work.
So this will basically be within.
That's correct.
Okay, any updates on cemetery personnel?
No.
Okay, and so we're on to new business. I do have a question, a question and a statement. The statement that I have is that we didn't receive a printout for money spent for last month up until now, as we did last month. And then my question is, even after looking over this, some things just did not add up from the statement from last month. And I guess I do have two questions. So my last question is, so are we, when the money comes in for the burials to go to sea management, are we paying them in installments or are we paying them what we owe them?
We're paying them, I believe, what we owe them.
So you saying on record we don't owe them anything at this time besides what
No.
we're about to vote on?
I'm certain that we do owe them some of the money, too.
Okay, so that means they've been paid in installments instead of being whatever is earned for what they do, going straight through us to them.
If that's what you meant by installments, yes.
Okay, so do you have an amount that we owe them?
I do not.
So there were no changes from the last report that you got. That's why you did not get a new one. I can tell you that not on the very last invoice, because we just got one today, but the one prior to that, the total amount with that invoice, which includes what you will be voting on today, is $42,525. $42,525.
So let me make this clear, make sure that I'm understanding this. So with today's invoice and what we'll be voting on, that's the total of the $42,525 owed?
With what you will be voting on today, correct?
And so will we be able to cover that full amount so that we are at zero?
I don't know the answer right offhand to that.
Okay, so do you have an idea when you'll know that?
Yes, ma'am, I'll know that this, before the week's out.
Okay, Tiffany, is it possible that we can get a copy of the invoice that you just received? I saw that one of the board members had her hand up. Go ahead.
So are the bills paid fully every month, or are you only paying in installments? So are any bills that's owed by the cemetery, are we paying them in full, or are you only paying in installments?
We're paying in installments as we're able to pay. It's not just for the cemetery, that's for the city as a whole.
I guess that just brings me, I'm not going to say I guess, that just brings me to another question then. So I would have to say then at this, when we have these meetings, that we should know what we're able to pay them. So with that being said, that's what we vote on instead of voting on what we owe them.
The reason you're voting on what we owe them is because as cash flow takes place and cash is available, I may be able to pay something more on it this week, next week. I don't need to come back to you to get a vote to pay the people. If you've already accepted the bill and voted on it, when we get the cash, we simply pay it.
But you asking us to vote on something that you're not fully paying, so if you're not fully paying the bill, where's the leftover money?
There is no leftover money. You're doing exactly what the city commission does. At every meeting, they pass on all the bills that are owed, and we pay as the cash is available to do so. And we try to do it constantly so that everybody is getting paid some of what's owed.
Is there any way that we can get a printout for the cemetery board of what we have been paying, since we voting on what we owe and not what we paying?
Madam Clerk, did we not give them that last meeting?
Yeah, they did give it to us last meeting, Member Smith, but as I was stating, it just didn't add up. That was my concern, just looking over it after the meeting. Yeah, it just didn't add up, and dates were just kind of like all over the place.
So that's why I'm confused, because we saying that we paying $42,000, but we're not paying the $42,000. So that's why I'm confused, the payment.
I guess my question is to you, Mr. Little, then, okay, we voting on this $42,525 that's owed. So let's say today they get a check for $20,000. When will we know the other $22,525 is paid?
Next meeting, we'll give you a listing of everything that's paid since the last listing that we gave you.
Okay, moving on. Transfer of funds for burials.
The amount from March 13th to April 2nd, which is 2 invoices, is a total of $12,200. From March 13th to April 2nd, that was 2 invoices.
So this 42,425, is that part of the $38,105 that was past due?
I don't know, because I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Invoice dated March 13th of '25, where you had a past due balance of $38,705, less 2 checks, check number 82464 for $2,095, and check number 82463 for $3,045, and check number 82462 for $3,240.
Then there was another invoice dated April 2nd, so the
Okay,
total
so-
of all of that would be that 45,000.
Okay, thank you.
I move that the transfer of funds be approved.
Support.
Motion by Frazier, second by Childs. Member Smith? Member Brown?
No.
Member Childs? Yes. Member Jackson?
Yes.
Chair Frazier?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Comments from the board?
I think, with the situation we've been in for all this time since I've been on the board and before it, Burke been being real patient, and the way the money is being transferred to him, I appreciate him getting it the way he's getting it, because he know what situation we in. City manager is doing the best he can and all he can to make sure that Burke get paid. The cemetery has not received no money in a long time because of the emergency city managers. All this stuff was put on Mr. Little's shoulder, and he's doing all he can do, and I appreciate what he do, and I appreciate the patience of Mr. Burke. Nothing gonna happen overnight. We're in a bad situation. We don't have no money. And Mr. Little is taking money from here and there to make ends meet. I appreciate that. So by this being said, we just got to have patience and see how it go. And I'll let Mr. Little do his job. Thank you.
Just for some clarity, and I know we've heard it mentioned, and it was just mentioned by Darrell in reference to the emergency manager. And so for clarity for me is, what was the status of the cemetery board in reference to funds that came in for the plots and opening and closing? What was that? Was that monies dealt with by the cemetery board? Were they budgeted and paid their bills, or was that the same process that we're going through now? Where it went into the city's account in the city?
I can only speak to the period prior to the emergency managers. I was here back in 2000 and back in the early 80s. The cemetery generated sufficient income and had its own budget, its own staff and whatnot, and it virtually functioned almost independently. Now, why the emergency manager got involved with it, I don't know, because I'm unaware of anything that had changed. To my knowledge, there's never been a budget for cemetery in the city's budget, and normally the city wasn't paying anything for the cemetery. So whatever reason they had for doing what they did is beyond me. All I know is what they left us with is no budget, no source of income whatsoever. There's no tax levy for the cemetery, never has been. And essentially, what is happening, and I'm going to back up and just kind of go through this again because I feel bad about these little exchanges, and it tells me that you're not understanding what I'm saying. It isn't that we're just picking and choosing not to pay somebody because we don't want to, whatever. It's because we're trying to deal with the reality of what the situation is that we have. When these emergency managers left here, they left us with about a $2 million deficit. In fact, it was $2.5 million until I laid off the city staff and put it under contract out at the water plant. In addition, all of the costs associated with the cemetery as far as what we pay, other than the monies that come in to pay for the graves and the digging and the operation of the cemetery, that all comes in and is scheduled to go to C management. And as we get it, we do go ahead and pay it to them. But one of the things that comes as a problem with doing it the way we have to do it with the city is that the city's own financing is up and down and up and down. One period, we get the state money that comes to the city, the share. And then we've got money we pay and catch up a number of bills. Then we go through a period here, and then some of the summer taxes, for example, will come in. We'll pay the bills. Now, in terms of how we have to do that, we have to make sure we've covered payroll through these periods, and then what's left, we try to pay some to everybody that we owe so that nobody is neglected. We appreciate the cooperation and help that all of our vendors give to us. So we try to treat everybody fairly and pay as we go. Then you go through a spell there where the revenue is very low. It's what and I mean, keep in mind part of the challenge that I wound up with is I come in behind almost 4 years of nobody paying water bills, trash bills, sewer bills, and it depleted the city's cash. Now, when I walk in the door and start trying to straighten this out, nobody makes any allowances for that. They can't. If money is owed to people, we just have to keep doing the best that we can do. And that's what we're trying to do. And in the process, I have numerous things going on that are designed to try to close this gap and bring this thing down to where the expenses are more in line with the revenues. For instance, when I came in the door, our general insurance was costing about $500,000 a year. This year, it's a $700,000 bill. We can't afford that, but we can't not afford it. We have to pay it. And we're in the process right now of trying to see if we can get a new insurance carrier and get a better rate on it and so forth. And if we do that, that takes some of the pressure off and leaves a little bit more cash to work with. It's the same with just numerous things, and same with what we were just talking about with the grass. City can't afford to pay almost $400,000 every year for cutting grass, and especially when we're not getting the job that we're really expecting to get anyway. So we're looking for a way to do that at a lower cost, but still want to get the work done. And we'll get it done one way or the other. But that's what's happening.
Just so I'm clear, that's why I asked the question in reference to before the emergency manager. So from my understanding, what you just presented, that there was no budget, no monies coming out of the city's funds to support the cemetery for the workers, the one in the office, or the grave diggers and the grass cutter. The setup was they paid the cemetery was financially self-sufficient. No monies for the opening and closing or the plots came into the treasury of the city of Benton Harbor.
That's correct.
And so the board was responsible for the budget, seeing that the one that worked in the office was paid and those that worked digging graves and cutting grass. So in other words, the grass cutting, it was not outsourced. It was done by those workers that dug the grave, and I guess when they weren't digging graves, they were cutting grass and maintaining the cemetery.
That's correct.
Now, my question is this. So what has happened since then, well, we know what happened, that the city manager, the emergency manager, sold all of that equipment. And, you know, just like you said, you don't know why he would do it if it was self-sufficient. And now the funds go into the city treasurer, and the cemetery is no longer financially self-sufficient. And so the question in my mind, how do we get back to that? And the only way you're going to get back to it is that the funds that are taking in from the cemetery, plots and opening and closing, and which, you know, I guess they got some last week, and that's what I look at. What are the funds that are coming in monthly, quarterly, yearly, and what would it cost to pay an individual to be in the office, and what would it pay individuals to dig the grave and cut the grass? Now, I know there's no grass, no lawnmowers, no backhoe. Bert has them. And in my mind, it seems like some type of deal or a situation could be worked out. And because in my mind, is how do we get back? Right now, we're not going to never get back to that point if the monies are put into the city treasurer. And we all know, we all are aware what's happening with the city financially, because they had to vote to get some money out of the city tax fund. So the way, you know, I'm just a realist. I can't help it. That's the way God made me. The reality is we will never get to the point, the way we're going now, that the cemetery will be financially self-sufficient. And I know what you said. You said in reference to the water bill that there's plans, and down the road, not soon, but maybe down the road, somewhere down there, that there may be enough money that we might be able to create some type of budget to hire somebody and to get back maybe to how we were before. So right now, you know, personally, I just don't see it.
If I might kind of,
We're gonna continue to be doing what we're doing now. Now, the big discussion was, and this is the last, was the monies. Why are we voting for partial payments? And that was the big discussion. I didn't even engage in it because it wasn't something that I thought would. I was pretty much clear on it once it came out. So, but I don't know. I guess we'll never get back to the cemetery becoming financially self-sufficient.
and I don't know whether the answer is never or maybe on becoming fully financially sufficient. But it is my plan to, in fact, before this year is out, get back with Bert and sit down and work out. We had started talking some months ago, but I had to suspend that to try and get some of the other crises dealt with. But I want to get back with him and start working on a transition plan where we become more involved. And frankly, I think they'd like to see us get more, and they would like to be less involved with doing this. I don't think they want to do it on a long, extended term. But it is a process, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight or in 2 months or 6 months. It's going to take a while, because even when and if we do that, it's still not going to be self-sufficient, because the other half of whatever we do, I've still got to figure out how much money and where I'm going to get it from out of the city's budget to try to help do whatever we're trying to do to try and improve it. I would love to see us get back to where the cemetery can operate and get its own grass cut and take care of the limbs and the streets and whatever needs to be done out there. But it's going to be a while before that occurs, and I'm not going to try to tell you anything any different. It's not going to happen in no 1-2 years or something. It's going to take a while. And frankly, the same for the rest of the city and some of the problems that we're having, like the water plant. It's going to take a minimum of 5 and maybe longer to straighten that out. But that's what we got handed to us, and we just have to do the best that we can.
First of all, you gotta have trained people to know how to dig these graves, and Burke was willing to do that, and he haven't had no success with nobody trying to learn how to dig these graves. I seen the setup. I watched it twice. You gotta at least have 4 or 5 people out there. You gotta know what you're doing. I saw how he dug those graves. Burke was willing to train some people, and that's what you want to start off with. That's a lot money that the graveyard cemetery can be getting, but you must train some people. We need at least 4 or 5 people. And also, Burke was willing to sell the equipment back for a lot less. There's nothing wrong with the equipment for digging the graves. That's what he used. That's what I saw. So that's a start. That's a big start. So it can come back. You just got to stay with it. And also, you can get in-house to be cutting grass, and it'd be a lot less. Jack is doing the best he can and what he can do. I saw his crew again, and he need a few more people. But if you can help Jack with some in-house people, you can bring revenue back to the graveyard, to the cemetery. And like I said, Burke is doing the best he can, all he can do. He got patience. I appreciate that. And Mr. Little got all this on his shoulder, and he's doing the best he can. Like I said, it ain't going to happen overnight, but it's a big start. If we can come together and start getting some people trained to dig these graves, And that will happen because Burke said, send me some people in here to do it. I spoke with him a few times about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do understand in regards to the city's financial straits. However, if we vote to transfer money, our expectations is what we owed is paid. I don't believe I voted yes for installments, and I'm not sure when that happened. I've been going through my minutes. But nevertheless, that's where we are. Also, I was just interested in knowing the status of our perpetual care fund and the status of our checking account, the cemetery at Huntington, formerly Chemical, because I would be more comfortable knowing that the money that is owed goes from our checking account directly to C Management instead of passing through hands, paying other bills. That's the least we can do for the residents in Benton Harbor.
Let me weigh in on that. Burke is the one, is taking all this and receiving this. And Mr. Little, I don't see the board having to have anything to do with it because everything that's happening with the cemetery is going through the city manager. They got it. So, however, Mr. Little was doing it, and Burke is agreeing with it, accepting it, it's fine. Let it continue going through the city manager because we don't have nothing. So therefore, when the funds come through and handle through bank or whatever, I don't agree with that at all. Let it go through the city manager, and because he's paying all the bills anyway, the city manager is. So unless Burke got a problem with it, I don't see nothing wrong right now until it gets back to, top status.
Be advised that we made an agreement, the board and the city manager, that we would work in collaboration with each other. We would work in sync to get this back together. That's what the agreement was in April of '21. That agreement, that resolution, has been castrated to the lowest common denominator, and we're left without any voice. Therefore, as a board member, which is our due diligence, we are or supposed to have access to this information. We can, but it's not given. It wasn't given prior to Mr. Little taking the position. And here we are again. We say that it'll take time. I've been on the board under 3 chairpersons, and this redundant board meetings, same thing over and over again, little to no progress. So, yes, we've got to get our boots on the ground, get our hands in it, and that's what the board is set up to do. So if it makes anyone uncomfortable, this is the truth. It's not fair to the families. It's not fair to the residents. So the very least we could do is do our due diligence as best as we can with the agreement that was a resolution of April of '21. And you can look it up.
If I might, respectfully, we really appreciate Burt and C Management working with the city as they have to keep this going as we've been doing. Again, the city is doing the best that it can do. I don't know who the city manager was you made your agreement with back in 2021, but Mitchell's not here now. All right? And what I'm trying to say is I'm doing the best that I can with what we have to work with. And we're going to see and try and pay everything that we can to see management as we're able to. Granted, you don't get all of the details and whatnot, and part of that isn't because of an unwillingness. I mean, if you just look at the bigger picture, this office, when I was in it in 2000, still had 100 people working for the city. We've now got less than half that. I'm going around doing a half a dozen different things, and I'm actually short on time for being able to sit down and go through step by step and piece by piece with you as much as I might otherwise like to, because there are the things that I have to do. But I'm just going to try and keep working with the situation to improve it and do the best that we can to move it along. I mean, what I'm trying to say to you is if 10 people, just to use an example, had graves and they were $1 a piece, and we get paid $10. Well, $10 is what I would pay to Bert. But if one of those dollars, say the check went back or something, I still owe Bert $10, and I'm not going to go running around talking about the $1 check that didn't clear. I'm just going to look for the next means to try to go ahead and pay it. And you may have that same feeling that, well, 10 people went and you ought to have $10. Well, you're right, I should have, but I don't. And I just do the best that I can with what we got to work with and keep on moving.
Well, in the stance of keep on moving, I would like to see our chairperson, at least her updated, so she could filter it to us. So when we come to these meetings, some of our questions are already done, answered, and our research is complete. That's all we're asking. Open communication, transparency, collaboration. That's all. That's all we've ever asked for.
I agree with Ms. Brown because she's been asking for information and she's not getting it. I'm not understanding that because when you give the information, all you have to do is just pass it along to her, to our chair, so we can get the information. I'm not understanding what's so hard about passing along information. The same information you get, she should get. No problems.
So in closing, just to give you an example, last year when there was this big write-up in the Herald Palladium and wherever else that it can be explained that we were ONC management over $100,000. Well, just put yourself in our shoes, not knowing this information. So it's like, okay, I'm sitting there being fed a bunch of crap or whatever every month, and that's not fair because we're giving up our time. Nobody on this board is paid. So everything is volunteer, and we're invested. So, so as I stated and as I asked about partial payments, so, okay, I understand what you're saying. But so, and also with that being said, if with this $45,000 and $42,525 that's owed, if only $22,000 is going to be paid, we should be made aware of that so that once it's paid off, even if it's installments, that it's being paid off and not, not being blindsided. That's not collaboration. That's showing that the board is not respected, and I'm definitely not okay with that. So that's where I stand with all of that.
We will do better.
I'm closing this meeting, calling it to close at 1:51 p.m.
Support.
Member Brown?
Yes.
Member Chair? Sorry, Member Childs?
Yes.
Member Jackson?
Yes.
Member Smith? Chair Frazier? Motion
Yes.
carried.